ones that doesn't, it'll turn them off,
Yeah.
which is fine.
And it may be just one guy that triggers. It's like, when I saw Michael Newton lecture, I had 4 big events. One was the UFO sighting. One was seeing Dr. Michael Newton lecture. So when I saw Michael Newton lecture, I remember it was the same thing as when I had the download in 2012. 2012, I was going to go see Colin Andrews. I wasn't interested in UFO crop circles, couldn't care less. There's lectures all day long for 7 days or whatever, and it's like, I may able to go across to the library or on the other side or whatever. And same with Michael Newton. It's like I wasn't talking about UFOs. I go, it's like, I don't know. And I go, I'll go in. What the heck? I go in there. And it's like when I walked out, it was like, so my head was spinning. It's like for 2 days. And that's the thing. Even one lecture, one person triggered, and then all the work I did on that after that. So it's not even you have to appeal to 10% of the audience. You just got to trigger 1 or 2 people who have agreed to watch that movie in their past life and come in. And
well, what are the odds? So you had that experience in 2012, and you met Chris Bledsoe in 2013 or 2014?
2013, but there's a synchronicity there because Chris Bledsoe, I had the experience February 26th. Ray Hernandez, who did the free survey with Edgar Mitchell, did all that research and wrote books on consciousness and stuff like that. He had his experience with the dog, the healing of the dog, on March the 4th, so like a week later. And then Chris Bledsoe, he told me it was February 26th. Now he sort of says it was Easter, so about a month later, Easter of 2012. So all 3 of us had these events, and we're all closely connected. And I don't know if they really believe, but to me, it's like there's no way this stuff happened by accident.
Totally.
Where you see this, because that was 2012, and if you remember 2012, they said it's the end of the Mayan calendar, the world's going to come to an end and stuff, and they say, well, nothing really happened. And it's like, well, yeah, stuff did happen. It's like, it's just that doesn't happen to everybody, because that was dramatic. I mean, Chris Bledsoe is a major figure, and Ray Hernandez, I'll show you his book. I mean, it's the book that I go to most of anything, because it's sort of like it has all these figures, like how many 80% of all UFO experiences have had an out-of-body experience. So it's these kind of figures where I'll be doing a paper, and then I'll be talking about out-of-body experience, and I'll go, how many percentage? I'll go to the book and see what was the percentage, or how many have had 37% of near-death experiences. And I say that, do you think this is random, that you've been abducted by an alien, and then 37% of those people claim they've had a near-death experience, and most of the ones I've talked to have had more than one Chris had 2 near-death experiences, and it's like, what's the chances? Because we see them as random events. It's a random event. You were in the wrong place at the wrong time, and this alien grabbed you and took you inside the ship, and you had an accident, which is a random event, and there's 2 random events, but all these people are having the same random events, and you go, is this random, or is this actually happening? And that's the thing when you see these patterns of 50% are cured, or 50% claim they can heal people and stuff like that, and you're going, this is not chance, this means something. And yet Ray Hernandez said the same thing. He actually packed her in. I don't think he really does UFOs anymore. He was so frustrated by the lack of attention, and I knew it as well as him. And you'd go to, for example, Consciousness Life Expo is in LA every year, February. And it's got like 20,000, 30,000 people there. They have a Spanish floor where there's Spanish lectures and stuff like that. It's a massive thing. So you go in there, and I remember I'd go give a consciousness lecture, and I'd have like 35 people. And then across the hall, they had the guy with the blue avian thing. I remember that blue avian thing. And they gave me a free ticket to it. It was like $80 or $70 or something like that. I go, I don't really want to go. But 5 minutes to 8, I go, I got this ticket. It's terrible to waste the ticket, so I guess I'll go see what he's talking about, because I'd heard some rumors about. So I go down there, and there's this line up down the hall. It's like 100 people down the hall, and they're furious because they've all got these $80 tickets, and they bought these tickets. There's 600 people in the room, and it was all full. There's no place to sit, and these people are in the hall. They paid for tickets, and they were just furious. They wanted their money back and stuff like that. So they had a second session. He did the first session, then the second session, and I'm thinking to myself, he's got like 700 people, and I got 35, but he's talking about this, space cadets and all this, this sort of stuff. And then you realize, and Ray Hernandez is the same thing. You go and give a lecture, and nobody's interested. Nobody even comes to the lecture. They're into the circus. I call it the circus. The UFO sightings and stuff like that. And it's like the whole idea is like, what difference does it make? The government knows. Forget it. The government knows. And there are UFOs. What difference does it make? Let's go out and look at another UFO. I mean, how many UFOs do you need to look at? It's almost like in 100 years ago, what the rich people did, and this is like people will ask, why does Stephen Greer, how does he get these people to pay $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 to go for these Skywatch things? It's because the rich people like to do this. This is what they did in the time of Stanford University, that people would go to seances. The rich people, they needed entertainment, so they would do seances, and people would bring in the dead people. And now we go for sky watches, and it's sort of moved. And so I remember I was talking to his main guy in California, Joe Burks, who's Stephen Gurr's main guy in the early days, and then he broke off with Stephen Gurr. But he had a group, and it was all like emergency room doctors, millionaire people and stuff, all these rich people. And then it occurred to me, yeah, these people, this is like entertainment. And that's why I say to people, you just want the entertainment. And that's what Walker said. Why should we change the rules and regulations to satisfy your curiosity? For a lot of people, they're missing the boat. It's just an interesting thing, and that's where it benefits people like film producers like you. Is people are looking for entertainment, so they'll turn, rather than coming to my lecture, there'll be nothing's on, and there's a show about paranormal phenomena. Let's watch that. Let's laugh at that thing, and they turn it on, and they get to watch it. Whereas if they got to step out of their way and go into that world, they're not going to go into that world, and that's where the government knows this. Because I said they did it with Disney. He had this UFO documentary he was supposed to do in '56. Then, according to the main guy, who was the guy who did Cricket, one of the main 9 animators, and he gave a lecture, and he said that they had offered Disney all this film, and at the very end they said, "Oh no, we can't give you the film." And he still did the documentary, but it never became public. And then they went to Bob Emenegger, and they said, "We want you to do these 8 documentaries on military stuff, working with dolphins, 3D holography, all this kind of stuff. And then after that, we'd like you to do this UFO documentary, and we'd like you to hide it under the other 8 documentaries." And then Bob went, "What? You mean this is for real?" I used to tell Margaret, quit reading that stupid National Enquirer stuff. The alien had my baby. You telling me this is for real? And then the guy says to him, the security manager says, "What would you say if I told you that we had a landing at Holloman Air Force Base in May 1971? It was filmed by 4 crews, and we'd give you the film for..." And he's going, "What?" His world came apart. So they went to Emenegger, and then they went to Moore, and then Tom DeLonge came along, and he had 15 million subscribers or whatever, and then he made a pitch, and they said, "Yeah, we can use you." And that's the thing, because the government doesn't do documentaries, so they have to contract documentaries, and they'll put this stuff, and they want people to tell these stories. They just don't want you to, they'll never give you the real story. They want sort of a story that's half true, half false. It still raises the consciousness, but you don't spill the milk, because once they spill the milk and tell the real truth, well, then it's all over. They can't control the story. It runs away from them.
Do you think if the government, do you think if we stop focusing on the UAVs or craft and switch to consciousness, that the government might disclose that they can see that other people already, and maybe it's not the government,
Well, yeah, I think the government. That's what the government. I think that's what the cover-up's about. If there's a real cover-up, it's that aspect of the consciousness that they know it's not this nuts and bolts stuff, and they're trying to figure it out because it's so far advanced that they're like, people say, "Well, they got the stuff," and I said, "You think that we got crafts that are the size of a football field inside and they're 30 feet on the outside? Give your head a shake. There's no way. Or you can move from one side of the galaxy to another." I don't think they've got that figured out, and that's what's so important. Is this idea that the most highly classified secrets are weapon secrets. And the way it worked in World War II was that the security only started in 1942 with Roosevelt. He wrote the first executive order on security to protect the atomic bomb. So they're protecting the atomic bomb, so they have these levels of security that unless you were working on the project, you can't get in, stuff like that. And then Eric Walker developed a homing torpedo, then they developed proximity fuse, then they developed nylon, then they developed plastic explosives, artificial rubber. It's like 200 inventions in World War II. And this came with all the security stuff because they got all the scientists and stuff like that. Instead of sending them to war, they put them in these labs to work on weapons, to work against the Germans and the Japanese. And then at the end of the war, they went, "Hey, that worked pretty good." So then they kept the security going, and then they had these labs. So they have the labs with the security, and they're developing stuff, and they would develop all this other stuff. And the prime one that they mention is the GPS. GPS was invented by the military. And then once they get to the second generation of GPS, then they released it.
Well, even Nike.
Yeah.
That was military. Why we wouldn't need it?
Yeah.
Any other reason?
Yeah, and that's the thing. And they realized this system works. And then the other thing was, people always wonder, like, there's always these stories about the Navy. Like Bob Lazar said, it was the Navy that was running the program. And I believe that may be true. Because the thing is, it's this whole thing of how government works. So in 1946, or 1947, the UFO thing happened, the Roswell thing happened. The Air Force was created in 47, but in 46, they had UFO sightings. Beginning of 47, they had UFO sightings, and the Air Force wasn't there. So the Navy was running it. And the Navy, all the research funding was for military, was going to the Navy. And the Navy has got all its money. So if the Air Force comes along and says, oh, there's a UFO crash, you've got to give us all the research money now, they go, get lost. We got the research money, we're not giving it up. You're not going to hand it off. That's why you have, you know, the Army had an Air Force, and then there's the Air Force, and then the Navy has an Air Force. They got planes, and everybody's got all these multiple services because everybody's trying to get this research money. And people don't realize that almost all research money for basic research comes from the government. Because in the UFO problem, we have no research money because government's not funding us. And that's why these guys are pushing this stuff in Congress. They're trying to get this money. They're trying to draft off of research money, which is given out by the government. But the money's all going into the military. So the military's sucking up all the research money, and they're developing this new technology, and then it funnels down into the world. And so then you start to understand why the Navy may have been running this thing, and why it's so secret, because of the way they develop technology. And if you're on the leading edge, it's like this, I quote this document from 1974 already, from the DIA about apports. If we could develop the apport technology, we could go to the enemies, go into the safe, get the documents, bring them back to Washington, photocopy the documents, go back to the vault, put them back in the vault, and they would never know we were there. So they're looking at it like, wow, we could figure this stuff out. Now, I don't think they've still figured it out, but they're working on it, and you hear all these stories. I mean, they brought in magicians, the CIA, and anything is like water. Anything has two things. You can use water to stop someone from dying of thirst, or you can drown them in it. Everything has two things. So everything the military looks at, is there a potential for military application? And they look at all this stuff. And when I did the book on inspiration, I talk about this whole thing about how inventions come. A lot of inventions come from this whole thing. Like you look at a tree, how does the sap go up in a tree? And they look at it, and how does it do that? And that's how you develop technology. You see, how does nature do it? And all you're doing is duplicating nature and patenting it. And that's what the military does. They do that, or they look at a shark. How does a shark go through the water so fast? It's the type of skin it has, and then they develop planes, and that's how it's all working. It's this idea for technology, and there's so much money in technology that if you can get one patent, it can be worth millions and millions and millions of dollars. So everybody's fighting for the patents, and they're fighting for the research money that's given out by the government, and that people don't realize that most of the research money is given by the government, and therefore and you need something to spin it. So what's happening now is you're using the fear thing, you're using the separation thing, that unless it's like advertising, find a need and fill it. You have to basically go in there with a problem. So if you go in and say, well, we're interested in UFOs, what are UFOs? And they go, get out of here, and don't let the door hit you on the way out. I mean, I'm the agriculture guy. What do I care about UFOs? So that's why they've changed this whole thing, because when Leslie Kane wrote her book in 2010, so Leslie Kane writes the book in 2010 about the generals and all this stuff, and basically she took Stephen Greer's stuff. It was all Stephen Greer's witnesses. She was brought in for Stephen Greer, and then she defended it to me. She said, well, the reason Stephen said take the witnesses and do something with it, so she wrote the book. And these are all Stephen Greer's witnesses. But when she wrote that, she said the threat was to airline traffic. And I guess everybody in the government started laughing. Come on. Nobody would know. They were trying to get research money, and they couldn't get it. So then you turn it, and then that's when they did the threats scenario. So you got the threat scenario is they're going to rape the women and eat the kids and all this kind of stuff. And you want to have this threat scenario, because we actually had a meeting. I don't know if I told this story. So we had a meeting with, what happened was there was a member of parliament here in Canada who wanted to get this thing out. He got interested in it. And I didn't know he was briefing 10 other members of parliament from different parties. And he was in the opposition party, so he didn't have any power to do anything. And I found out about him. They wanted all the Wilbur Smith files, so I provided them the Wilbur Smith files, him and his aide. And then went along, and then I heard that he wanted to know more material, so I had this brilliant idea. I said, hey, I phoned his aide, or contacted his aide, and I said, hey, if I set up a panel of experts in the UFO field, could you get McGuire and whoever else he wants to have a panel, and we'll broadcast this thing. we'll have like a Zoom conference, and these guys, I had Elizondo, Gary Nolan, Avi Loeb, Chris Mellon. These are going to be the people on the panel. So these would be the witnesses, and these guys who weren't public yet, these government people, government representatives, would say, hey, we're interested in this, and ask questions, and everybody in Canada would go, there's 10 MPs that are into UFOs? And then they thought, this is great. So we had these meetings. We had 2 meetings. So the first meeting we got, and then I was going to, instead of me running it, I said, I'll stay out of it. I'll just sort of run it. And I was going to bring in a guy, a big podcaster, to run this thing. He's out of Toronto. And then they said, no, I found out, no, they didn't like this guy. They don't want this guy as the thing. And okay, whatever. And so we made all the proposals and stuff. So we had the second meeting. And the second meeting is when it came down. They said, well, this is what you do. You get these military people, and you get the cases, and then you go in front of a parliamentary committee, and then you tell them there's a threat, and we got to get the funding or whatever. I said, well, it's not going to work. We don't have. It's not military. Canada couldn't care less about the military. You got a few planes, but we don't have nothing. We haven't got any military witnesses. We've got no thing. And he said, well, no, you got to do that. He said, it's the Logan Law. We can't tell you what to do, but this is what we're sort of advising. I said, well, no. And then the aide to Maguire, the MP, is trying to explain to them, this is not how it works. If you're in the government, then you run the committees. But you can't, if you're in the opposition party, we can't go and tell the committee to spend money, and even the committee can't spend money because you're going to bring people on subpoena. I said, we can't do this. We don't run the committees. And then they kept going, and they kept going on this threat scenario, and we kept saying, there's no threat. We don't have a threat here, and all sorts of stuff. And then Mellon says, no, the Canadians what they were going to do, we're going to run it as a cover. So the Prime Minister of Canada, his science advisor, and this report is about to come out any day now, and they're going to run a report, but it's going to be a scientific report. It's going to be a scientific investigation, not like the U.S. military, like a threat scenario. So they're going to have this scientific investigation, and we were going to be the cover. So this thing would go all over the place. These MPs all are asking questions about UFOs. We should do a UFO investigation. And then she had the cover to do this UFO investigation. So we said, well, no, the Canadians want to do a scientific investigation. Well, no, this threat, they brought this threat scenario up again like this, and then the aid went back again. You don't understand how Canadian government works. We can't do this. This report's going to get done. They want a scientific investigation. That's all they're interested in. And then Mellon says, okay, that's the poison pill. I'm gone. And that was it. The whole thing was over. And it was sort of like, we're not telling you what to do, but unless you do what we're telling you to do, we're not going to help you. And they sort of pulled out, and then they blamed me. They said, oh, this one guy, his name was Cahill. He was a good friend of Elizondo. And he said, you're going to turn this into a circus. I said, damn right, I was going to turn it into, what do you think? And I had all these people, and it was like anybody who had a YouTube channel, you'd get direct feed. It wouldn't be like I'd have it all on my feed and have the whole thing. And we were going to try to get like 30. Jimmy Church was going to put all these feeds together and have 30 feeds, and it was going to be fed all over the place. And I said, damn right, you're going to turn it into a circus. That's what the whole idea was, to make this, give a cover to the Canadian government to do an investigation. And it all fell apart, and then that all went away. But that would have been absolutely fascinating, having these experts and these MPs who knew nothing about UFOs. And nothing. Then just, what about this? What about that? And ask these questions, and it would have been the biggest show on earth. And it all died because we wouldn't go with the threat scenario. And that's what they're trying to do, is they're trying to give the threat in order to get the money, because unless you have a threat, there's no need, there's nothing to fill, and we couldn't care less. We're the government, we don't do this. Almost like I mentioned with film producers. They don't do films, so they got to bring in film producers. They got to contract it out. And if you go in there with a pitch, like Tom DeLonge said, you guys have a message. You're not getting it out. Nobody's listening to you. You're these old guys and stuff. I can get the message out. And then the guy said, hey, this might actually work. And that's why they went with him, because he could get this sort of message out, same as this film producer I'm working with now. And I said, that's the pitch you make. You need me. I can get the message out for you and stuff like that, and to look at him, and now they're checking him out. Is he doing the right type of stuff? Can we trust him? Should we tell him? Get him a non-disclosure agreement, so he signs a non-disclosure. Same as Tom DeLonge. You can't tell you who his witnesses are and stuff like that. They seal a thing, and then they get you to tell the story, and everybody says, it's just fiction, Tom DeLonge's making it up. But it gets out. That's what they want. They don't really care. It's just the stuff keeps getting out, keeps dripping into the consciousness of the world, and they don't want you to figure it out. They don't want. Otherwise, they would stand the president up and tell you what's going on. They don't want it. They're doing this gradual drip. And I remember Mellon said, no, it's not happening. There's no gradual disclosure happening. And then I point out, well, Mellon in 2016 was on Coast to Coast with me. He was on the third hour, on the first 2 hours. And when he came on, they said to him, oh, Grant's talking about this. I just written this UFOs Area 51 and government informants. He said, well, Grant's talking about this gradual disclosure thing the government's doing. He said, no. He said, there's no government program. If there was a government program, I would know about it. And then I guess Semivan went and briefed him. Then he changed, but now he's saying, no, there's no gradual drip thing. They're not putting stuff out. And I'm going, McCaslin, Robert Weiss, and Kerry were all operational government, and they were all talking to Tom DeLonge. They had him inside a Lockheed skiff. They're dropping this stuff. So there's this sort of debate, and that's where I think I'm sort of unique. I'm saying the government is doing this kind of stuff, and that's where I advise this other film producer is the fact that he thinks they're going to actually stand up and tell the truth. And I'm saying, no, I don't think that's what they're doing. They want you to tell the story, and you're not going to be able to back the story up. You're going to have to sign a non-disclosure agreement. And by the way, I'm not signing a non-disclosure agreement. There's no way. And then they wouldn't let me look at the document because they know I'm not going to play that game. And even Sheehan says, I've never signed a non-disclosure agreement, nor will I ever, because then they control you. And that's what they did with the House. So the House is complaining now. They're saying, oh, we got. They're not telling us what's going on, like Burchett and people like that. And they say it's terrible, and they're covering this stuff up, and they don't realize that they're the government. So then they demand this briefing. So then the government sets them up. Said, yeah, you want a briefing? Okay, we'll go into the skiff. And they say, sign this non-disclosure agreement. And they go, bah. And they all sign the non-disclosure agreement, walk into the skiff, sign the non-disclosure, and they say, we had Blue Book, and there's no extraterrestrials, and it's all natural phenomena. And then they come out and they're all mad. It's like, holy cow, we knew all this stuff. It's all garbage. They were lying to us or whatever. And they say, what did they say? Well, we can't tell you. We got a non-disclosure agreement. So they basically shut up these guys under a non-disclosure agreement. And so they're controlling the story, and they're leaking it out, and they want that because I don't think they have all the answers. So they're trying to get you and I to do the research, and then they follow us, which is what I believe that the CIA said to Ron Pandolfi. Because we cannot control the phenomena, we watch those that the phenomena affects. Lights in the sky have limited material evidence. And so that's the thing, is when the experiencers say, oh, the government's watching me and they're in my computer, and I say, are you surprised? They're trying to figure it out too. The one famous one was Betty Andreasson. So Betty Andreasson had 6 books written about her abduction experience, and she had drawings. They were telling her how the craft flew and stuff like that, and she would have all these drawings. And her husband, they were in her husband's computer, and he actually set up a missile thing. They had the black helicopters, and he had this missile in his backyard, and the helicopter came over and made this turn and saw he had a missile. He's making it like he's going to shoot it down. And then he filed all these complaints that they were in his computer, and he knew where the computer was coming from, that it hacked his computer. And I said, oh, so let me ask you a question. Does Betty have any drawings on how the craft works? And he said, oh yeah, all the time. She's got drawing all the stuff. I said, are you surprised you're in your computer? Of course they're going to follow you. Why would they not follow you? Because that's where do you think the CIA gets their stuff? Do you think it falls out of the sky? They're getting it from people. Just like you go to Russia and you get the material, and they don't really care whether you're a good source or a bad source. It's like people say, like the one guy with child pornography or whatever, and it's like you got to get past that, because if you're going to Russia and you find the guy's a drunk and he's an alcoholic, you go, I'm not going to talk to the guy. He's an alcoholic. CIA go, he's an alcoholic? Let's get a bottle of beer. Let's go get him a bottle and let's talk to him. That's what you work on. You can put that stuff aside and work on getting the information. That's all you're interested in. And that's all we should be doing in the UFO community as well, is just trying to get the information. But everybody, what happens is if you can tag an abductee with some sort of conduct, then you can say you can discredit his whole story because he did this, or he had a parking ticket, or whatever it is. And we're playing this stupid game. And yet when you look across, especially when you look across the whole spectrum, which has only been done one time, no, I guess it's done twice. Kathy Martin did a smaller study, but you see the same thing in the second study. You see this thing, out-of-body experiences, near-death experiences, healings, all this kind of stuff, or the people where the lights go off. You hear these stories where I remember asking Chris Bledsoe, I said, so how much electrical stuff did you reckon? He says, like 3 washer and dryers, 3 microwaves and stuff. He touched anything. It's like, boom, it's like, it never work again. And you get that pattern. You start talking experiences. You get this whole thing that they can't touch electrical stuff. I remember the guy that they told me not to talk to. I went to his house. He said, anybody who doesn't believe, thinks I'm lying, just come to my house and stuff will happen. And John Alexander went there one night. And I said, John, you were at Romanek's house? He said, yeah, I was there. I said, hey, John, I heard something happened. Is that true? Yeah, something happened. I said, really? Because he's this skeptic guy. There's nothing, stuff like that. And I'm going, you were in Romanek's house and something happened? He said, yeah. I said, hey, John, so what happened? And he said, well, one thing he said, I'll tell you, we're out on the backyard, and he gets a picnic table, and he puts his flashlight on the picnic table, and he unscrews the flashlight to where it's just off and going off, and he leaves it off, and he puts it on the table, and it's off, and then he started asking questions, and then the thing starts flashing, 1 for yes, 2 for no, this sort of stuff. I said, that happened, John? That really happened? He said, yeah, it happened. He said, but that's just poltergeist. That's nothing. It's nothing real. And I'm going, poltergeist, that's the old thing. Give it a name and make it go away. It's like, you can't explain one unknown with another unknown. And so they told me to go to this guy's house. And so I said, I'll take it up. I'll go to this guy's house. He lives north of Denver. So I'll go there. I'll check this thing out. And if nothing happens, I'll guarantee, I'll tell you nothing happened. But if something happens, I'm going to tell it. Because there's all this controversy. The guy's lying. He's making this stuff up, whatever. So I went there, and he had really bad flu. I was talking to his wife. He had really bad flu or whatever. But the thing they warned me is, they said, when you go to his house, don't let him touch your computer. It's like, he'll blow your computer out. But you hear these stories, and you start to realize something's going on. What is this? Is this a sign that they make people be able to do this, or does this mean something in our potential?